There it is, Emilian. Okay, Dr. Coles, you are on.
Okay. I want to thank everybody for coming today and try to move this up. I think that I want to thank Senator Mayer, education leader, and Senator Harcum for being part of this discussion. As you're aware that with COVID-19, we've had an awareness that has been placed on how our students that are in marginalized communities or low-income communities actually have access to internet, which is an important factor in what we need to do in order to transition into remote learning. This situation has highlighted the need for us to be able to have a solution. And I applaud Senator Mayer for coming forward with a possible solution to the answer that we've been facing of how we can make sure all of our students have access to digital learning that they should have. We have a strong focus in our communities now talking about equity and what that would mean. And we certainly want to make sure that equity also includes digital access for all our students. So I don't want to talk anymore. I know Senator Mayer has lots of other things to talk about, but I want to thank her for the opportunity for this to be brought to the table, which is important for us to make sure we keep on this in front of us, because it's one of the areas that students around the country or around the state need to have access. And some of that access might be because of rural schools, but the access is something that's definitely needed. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Coles. So good afternoon. Thank you. I'm Shelley Mayer, State Senator for the 37th Senate District and also Chair of the Senate Education Committee. And first I want to thank Dr. Coles and Southern Westchester BOCES for hosting us. This is an important place to be hosted, BOCES, an important center throughout the state for students. I also want to acknowledge my two very good friends who are here, my colleagues as senators, Senator John Liu, Chair of the Committee on New York City Schools, which thanks to our leader, Senator Andrea Stewart-Cousins, we now have a separate committee for the nation's largest school district, well deserved and well overdue. And of course, my colleague who this morning declared victory, and we're so thrilled about that, Senator Pete Harcum, my colleague for many years. And I want to thank, I have a number of remarks. As I mentioned, we have many speakers, as many as we can accommodate. I've asked them to be on the side so that we can be responsible and socially distanced. Today we are announcing that we are filing our eLearn bill in the New York State Senate. eLearn for Let's Expand Access to Remote Learning Now. And that's what we're here to discuss today. I'm pleased to be joined by so many colleagues, by advocates and representatives of people who care about schools and children, people who care about equity, the digital divide, and our obligation to provide every child in New York State with free, quality broadband during this extraordinary time. It's time to end the digital divide here in New York State. First, let me introduce those here with me. As I mentioned, my colleague, Senator John Liu, Senator Pete Harcum, and I would note that already over 23 senators have signed on to this bill as co-sponsors. I expect it will have a number next week, and many more will sign on. And also, I want to acknowledge so many who are here, some of whom you're going to get to hear. Regent Fran Wills, our New York State Regent from the 9th Judicial District, Dr. Joseph Ricca, Lower Hudson Council of School Superintendents and Superintendent of the White Plains City Schools, my superintendent, Dr. Edwin Casada, Superintendent of the Yonkers Schools, the Reverend Mark McLean, President of the New Rochelle NAACP, and Oscar Cohn, Co-Chairman of the Education Committee of the Spring Valley NAACP, Karen Bellinger, Executive Director of the Westchester Putnam School Boards Association, Kyle Belakopitsky, got that right, Executive Director, my friend, of the New York State PTA, Dr. Mary Fox Alter, Superintendent of the Pleasantville Union Free School District, representing the Lower Hudson Education Council, Dr. Maria Rihanna, Superintendent of the Glen Cove City School District, representing the New York State Association of Small City School Districts, Durandi Martinez, Executive Director of the Community Resource Center of Mamaroneck, Meg Kaufer, President of the STEM Alliance, and there are many others. Unfortunately, unless we have time, they won't all get to speak, but very important that they're here showing the solidarity of support for this movement and this time. Jennifer Pyle, thank you, Executive Director of the Big Five School Districts, Reverend Steve Lopez, President of the Yonkers Board of Education, Samantha Rosada Ciriello, President of the Yonkers Federation of Teachers and NYSED Board of Director. She will get to speak. Rob Brijos, President of the Yonkers Council of PTAs. Vanessa Agudelo, Hudson Valley Representative for the New York Immigration Coalition. Dr. Michael Colhagen, CEO of the Center for Educational Innovation. Dr. Alexandria Connolly, CEO and founder of Culturally Responsive Environments and Discipline. Allison Lake, Executive Director of the Westchester Children's Association. Carrie Whalen Megley, Executive Director of Family Ties of Westchester. Emmanuel Rawlings, Program Assistants from the STEM Alliance, and Jacqueline O'Donnell and others from Southern Westchester BOCES who have really stepped up, and I'm so thankful. This bill starts with the premise that we, that is New York State, has a constitutional obligation under Article 11 of the New York State Constitution to provide a system of free common schools where all children of the state may be educated. Now, in the face of the COVID pandemic, every child, whether in full remote, hybrid, or even in-school learning, must have quality broadband in order to be educated. You simply cannot learn without it. You can't do homework without it, and yet too many of our students don't have it. Throughout my district here in Westchester, as well as the rural communities of New York, in our cities throughout the state, in the suburban communities, and in the beautiful, and let us not forget, our wonderful city of New York, our partner, we currently do not have free quality broadband for every child and school. What was once the need for chalk and chalkboard in a classroom has changed to the need for universal broadband for education. But it is not free nor available as our state constitution demands. Under Donald Trump, the federal government has failed to address this problem. They have not required companies to provide broadband for free. They haven't agreed to pay for it, and they haven't made it a priority. So we're going to address this issue within the bounds of the Constitution and New York law. The eLearn bill says that every student aged 5 to 21 in any school or place of education is eligible for the eLearn program, free, quality, 24-hour quality broadband access at their residence, whether a house, apartment, homeless shelter, trailer park, or elsewhere. Every student is entitled to broadband of 25 megabits per second at their place of residence. Every school building must also have free access to quality broadband, since teachers and staff must educate from these locations. And how do we do it? We impose an assessment on every telecommunications provider that operates in New York State on their New York-only gross revenues, enough to fund quality broadband for every child in every school, at a rate to be determined by the Department of Tax and Finance. Sorry, it's complicated. And the fund, the eLearn Fund, jointly operated by the Department of Tax and Finance and the Office of the State Comptroller, will use that money to pay school districts to work with local telecommunications providers so that every child has access at their home, and to contract with these companies to provide internet at buildings. In addition, to ensure we have true equity, telecommunications providers will have to reduce a customer's bill for broadband, if they're already paying for it, by the average expense per student if a student resides at that residence, or per school if the school is already paying for it. It is an equal playing field. Everyone, every school will have free, quality broadband. At the beginning of the process...
Good afternoon. Just a reminder, there is no PM BOCES tomorrow, November 25th. BOCES will be closing at noon. So there is no PM BOCES tomorrow. Thank you.
At the beginning of the process, schools will ask parents to simply say whether they need broadband access at their home, wherever it may be, on a simple form distributed by the schools. The form will not ask about your income nor your immigration status, just the number of children ages 5 to 21, where they live, and whether they need broadband access or whether they're already paying for it. Once the information is provided to the school and to SED, the telecommunications providers will start providing broadband service at thousands of students' homes around New York. The State Education Department will develop guidelines for distributing the funds, and the eLearn Fund will reimburse the districts and the providers for broadband access. Is it simple? No. Is it necessary? Absolutely. COVID has made apparent what we already knew. There is fundamental inequality in our education system, and we need to address it. From Buffalo to the North Country, from Bedford to Portchester to Yonkers, from the Bronx to Queens, and from Nassau to Suffolk, we have a problem of inequality that threatens our obligation of free common education. Let me just add, there has been much pain and sacrifice during this time. Every segment of our community, and I would dare to say every person here, has suffered personally, economically, and emotionally. We all know someone who has passed away. Sadly, suffering and sacrifice are everywhere right now. And equally true in the world of education, where parents, teachers, and schools have done so much and given so much, a Herculean job, putting everything aside to make it through this period and make sure education, even if imperfect, has continued. Now is the time for the major profit-driven companies that sell this essential service, telecommunications providers, to join in this shared sacrifice. It's their turn to join our neighbors and give back to ensure every child has an equal start. With this eLearn bill, we say let's work together to make education more equal, more just, and let New York State lead the path ahead by ensuring every child, regardless of where they live, has the tools to succeed. I'm going to turn it over to my colleagues, and sorry to be so long, but it's a complicated issue that we spent several months drafting. I want to give particular thanks to my staff who worked so hard to make this work. Mike Press, my legislative assistant, Emiliana Ulay, my press direct communications director, and Georgia Asciutto, my committee director, who worked hard to make a bill that will survive, that will thrive, and that will change the face of equity here in New York. So with that, I turn it over first to my colleague, Senator John Liu, chair of the Committee on New York City Schools.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Madam Chair. I am elated to join you and Senator Harckham and this wide-ranging cast of education leaders and activists from all throughout. Senator Mayer has already well articulated, eloquently so, this incredibly well-crafted, well-thought-out legislation. And all the highlights are in the news release that you can all have access to as well. I'm here to underscore many of the points that she has already made. In addition to my responsibility as chairperson of the Senate Standing Committee on New York City Education. Yeah, I know. I'm just looking at what type of plane it is. In addition to chairing that committee, I also proudly serve as a member of Senator Mayer's Education Committee. And we have seen this year the stark inequities that exist across the state of New York with our school children which are the biggest responsibility of state and local government if you just simply look at the size of the budgets relative to the overall budgets. And we see that we are not complying with state constitution. The New York State Constitution requires us to provide a sound basic education for all of the school kids in the state of New York. In this day and age, that is impossible without quality broadband internet access. That's precisely what this eLearn bill does. It begins to not only imagine but produce a system that will provide that quality broadband access to all school children. It is equity for the school kids, but it is also equitable for us to ask the internet service providers, the companies who sell this service, to step up through this assessment. Let's face it, in this time when people are more dependent on internet access than ever before, these companies are not hurting. Quite the contrary, they've been doing pretty well. We need them to recognize that we have this problem in the state of New York, and we're going to rely on their presence within our state borders to fund this incredibly important and vital service. So thank you, Senator Mayer, for your incredible leadership on this, and we look forward to complying with state constitution that says that all kids deserve a good education. Thank you.
And Senator Pete Harcum.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Senator Mayer. Welcome, everybody, to the 40th Senate District. I want to thank BOCES for hosting us today. It's an honor to be here with my friends and colleagues, Senator Mayer, Senator Lieu, and this great collaboration of educators and activists who care about our children. In the New York State Senate majority, we firmly believe that every child deserves a world-class education regardless of the zip code in which they live. And that fight is being led by Senator Mayer and Senator Lieu. And we have known for a while that we've had a digital divide. There's an urban digital divide, and believe it or not, a suburban digital divide, and we also know about the rural digital divide. And it's been enhanced and highlighted by the pandemic. But before the pandemic, in all of our districts, we had kids doing homework in libraries, in boys and girls clubs, in churches, because they did not have broadband access at home. And now with social distancing, they can't do that. Now with online learning, they can't do that. And as both my colleagues have mentioned, broadband is an essential tool, and it should be as essential as running water and electricity. That's how basic a need broadband is. And so the pandemic has highlighted these inequities in our society, and that's what the eLearn bill addresses. And I want to thank Senator Mayer for the courage to do this. You know, it's too often too easy for people to say, well, the private markets will handle this. Private markets have not handled it because the private markets don't care about poor kids. They care about people who pay their bills. And if we look at their performance in the last storm, they don't even care so much about the folks who pay their bills. So this is a critical piece of legislation to providing every child with equal opportunity for a world-class education. Now, it's also fortuitous timing because at the end of last session, we passed a piece of legislation to have a task force to map the digital divides in New York State. So, you know, we couldn't address the situation until we know where those divides are. And now this bill is a follow-up to that, and now we have a system. Senator Mayer's bill creates a system where we can address those divides. So I'm here fully supportive of this legislation. This will make a big difference. This will not be easy, but it's something that we have to do to get this basic essential tool in the hands of our families and the hands of our kids all over New York State. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Senator Harcum. And I'd like to call up Dr. Francis Wills, Regent for the 9th District, and then after that, on deck, as they say, Dr. Joe Ricca in White Plains.
First, I want to say that the Interim Commissioner, Betty Rosa, would have liked to be here today. She could not be here as she is dealing with a number of issues in Albany. It is my opinion that the policy goal of Senator Mayer's eLearn legislation meets the moment. I think more widely of the Tennessee Valley Authority, the TVA, or the rural electrification. They came out of a crisis in our history, and because of that, we have this electrical circuit throughout our nation. So this is a moment, this is meeting the moment, signaling that legislators are committed to ensuring educational equity by harnessing the resources in our business community to provide accessible, affordable, high-quality broadband internet so that every child and family in New York State can participate in the remote learning platforms that have become essential to learning during the pandemic. Indeed, as we have discovered during this emergency, The internet has become a critical educational path to empowerment, advocacy, and economic resiliency through college, career, and civic engagement, allowing all voices to be heard and offering new opportunities to creativity and collaboration. It is also up to our educational institutions to teach digital civics so that students have the tools to search for truth in the wilderness of internet deception. Access to broadband for all holds great promise in the quest for social justice. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And next we have Dr. Joseph Ricca on behalf of the Lower Hudson Council of School Superintendents, but for my purposes, Superintendent of the White Plains City School District and a fantastic friend.
Thank you.
Good afternoon and happy Thanksgiving. On behalf of the Lower Hudson Council of School Superintendents and our hundreds of thousands of children who we represent and serve in our communities, Senator, Mayor, Senators, thank you so much for taking this stand for our children. We talk about equity, we think about equity, but it's what we do that makes change and brings equity. When looking at our public school system, when looking at our private school system, when looking at access to broadband, no child in the state of New York, no child in the great state of New York should ever have to go without. The telecommunication companies, as part of their commitment to the community, as part of their commitment to the growth of the state of New York, I'm sure will happily look to contribute and make sure that every single child in New York has access. Now, this is another chance for New York to lead. It's another chance for New York, under the great leadership that we have and our elected officials, to show the nation that we can break paradigms, we can make positive change, and we can ensure that we're not just talking about equity, that we're making it happen. Senator, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Happy Thanksgiving, everybody.
Thank you, Dr. Ricca. And next we have Dr. Evan Casada, Superintendent of the Yonkers Public Schools, and then Reverend Mark McLean, President of the New Rochelle NAACP. No, on deck. Sorry, you weren't on deck.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for this opportunity, Senator, and certainly my dear Senator Mayors, thank you so much for your commitment to education, for your commitment to Westchester County, for your commitment to your wonderful city, the city of Yonkers. And thank you, Senators, for being supportive of this great woman over here and her work at the Senate level. Certainly, I am here with the President of the Board of Education, and I know that we also have parents from Yonkers, and we also have the President of the Yonkers Federation of Teachers, also from Yonkers. And we are here together because we believe in the possibilities. We believe in access. We believe in equitable opportunities for each and every one of our students. Let me be a little bit mathematical for a second. Think about the big 5 districts. 1.2 million children. Okay? The majority of them being Black and Latino children. Let us assume that 20% of them do not have access to the internet. That is equal to 240,000 children. So the question becomes, can we afford in New York State to have 240,000 children from the most needy districts in New York to not have access to technology? It is about equity. It is about social justice. It's about creating real opportunities for our children. There's no way that we can say that we are providing a sound basic education if we know that some of the young people that are here represented today do not have access to technology. If we recognize that distance learning, because of the pandemic, but also because there are real opportunities with distance learning, is possible for our children, then access must be present, and we cannot deny them that opportunity. So Senators, thank you for your leadership, thank you for your commitment, and please count on each and every one of us, because we are here to support your efforts, because it is about our children. Thank you very much.
And I'm not sure I mentioned, I know Eric Byrne, the superintendent of Rye City School District is here. Thank you. Another part of my district. And it's important to note that as we stand here today, these suburban districts are struggling with this issue equally as much as our city districts. And this is across the board problem. That's why we're giving this solution. So next, Reverend Mark McLean, and then Oscar Cohn from the Spring Valley NAACP. Thank you, Reverend.
Good afternoon and happy Thanksgiving to everybody. I know 2020 has been the year of the COVID-19 pandemic and we have suffered great loss and great adversity. But God has still been good to us, and so it is always appropriate to give thanks. And so I say happy Thanksgiving to everyone.
Happy Thanksgiving.
I want to thank Senator Mayer for her leadership and for always being in the vanguard for our students of this state. And you see, this is a very essential and important bill because education is the key to unlocking the power of the American dream. And so it is very important that the New York State Legislature has identified the need to make internet access accessible to all students, most important to students that have little resource. For years, we have suffered a resource gap between those students that have been well off and those students that have been not so well off. And a resource gap has manifested into an achievement gap. And so it's very important that this bill is in the state legislature, and I hope that with all the support that it will move through the state legislature expeditiously. And the great Reverend Jesse Jackson once said, an opportunity without preparation is no opportunity at all. And so this bill gives our children, all our children, a chance for preparation to take advantage of the great opportunities that we have in our great country. And finally, as a preacher of the gospel, I want to leave you with this idea that Jesus propagated, that we are only judged justly by how we treat the least of those amongst us. And so this bill is exemplary of taking care of the least of those amongst us. So again, I want to thank Senator Mayer and all the senators that have put forth this bill and given me the opportunity to add my voice to the chorus of support for supporting those students that are the least of us amongst us. Thank you, and God bless you.
Thank you so much, Reverend. Okay, Oscar Cohn, co-chairman of the Education Committee, Spring Valley NAACP, and a longtime fighter for equity in the challenging world of the Rockland Public Schools. Anyone who knows education knows this battle. And then Karen Bellinger from the Westchester Putnam School Boards Association.
I'm pleased to bring greetings from Willie Trotman and Francis Pratt, the two presidents of the NIAC and the Spring Valley branch. East Ramapo Central School District is one of 8 school districts in Rockland County. It has over 9,000 children, 95% of whom are children of color. Beginning in March 2020, in-person learning was replaced by remote learning, requiring access to both computers and to broadband internet service. For 9 months now, more than 5,000 East Ramapo students have been deprived of laptop, computer, or internet access. How do 5,000 students make up 9 months of lost time? Essentially being locked out of their schools. This would likely not have occurred had Senator Meyer's e-learn legislation been law. It was Rabbi Abraham Joshua Heschel, who marched with Martin Luther King, who said, "Few are guilty, all are responsible." I'm reminded of the Martin Luther King interpretation of the Good Samaritan parable. When confronted with someone in need, to ask not, "If I stop to help this man, what will happen to me?" But if I don't stop to help this man, what will happen to him? There's a vaccine about to be introduced to prevent COVID-19. There's a vaccine to prevent restricting marginalized and disenfranchised children from technology, the eLearn Act.
I'm so glad we get to pray. This really is, it's very nice for me. From the New York State, Karen Bellinger, and then Kyle Belkatowski and Beth Sniffen from the New York State PTA. Thank you, Karen. Sorry.
Okay. Good afternoon. I'm Karen Belanger, Executive Director of the Westchester Putnam School Boards Association. All students need access to home and school broadband service to support learning in a digital age. The COVID-19 pandemic has drawn greater attention to the educational inequities and disparity of access to reliable internet at home. This digital divide has often been referred to as the homework gap. COVID-19 has made it into an education gap. With remote and hybrid learning models the norm at this time, the ability to access virtual classroom learning, participate in class discussions, and even see the face of your teacher are all vital to the learning process. The Westchester Putnam School Boards Association commends Senator Shelley Mayer and her colleagues in the state legislature for working towards a solution that will allow every student and teacher to fully participate in virtual classrooms while the COVID-19 pandemic keeps students and teachers from being able to safely see each other every day in school buildings. Thank you.
And thank you to the members of all of our school boards who have really stepped up so much during this trying time. Thank you, Karen. Kyle and Beth Sniffen, and I know Rob Rehos, the president of the Yonkers Council PTAs, is here as well.
I'm Kyle Bellinger-Pitsky, Executive Director of the New York State Parent-Teacher Association, here with Beth Sniffen, our Regional Director for the Westchester East Putnam region, and Rob Rehos from the Yonkers Council of PTAs. On behalf of our 2.6 million school children and their families, thank you so much, Senator, for your work on this, Senator Lieu, Senator Harkman. We're so excited about this opportunity because a few things happened during the pandemic. Number one, we saw schools do amazing things for children and family each and every day immediately when we shut down in March. Our teachers, our school-related professionals, our transportation officials, our leaders in our school buildings, and our families step up every day to support every child. It is so critical that we continue this work. Unfortunately, we also saw a great and wide digital and technology divide amongst our school districts and amongst our children. This eLearn bill will begin to solve that problem, and we are so thankful and so supportive to fully support this bill and see everything we can do to get this implemented very soon in January. Families should never have to pick between putting food on their table or internet for their child. Families should never have to pick the choice between heating their home and allowing their child to have access to a remote learning ability in their home. Families should never have to choose between paying their rent and broadband. This bill begins to solve that problem. Senator, we're so thankful for your work, and know that each and every child will continue to have New York State PTA full support as we ensure that every child, no matter their zip code, no matter their gender identity, their ethnicity, their race, or their immigration status, continues to be fully supported for a high-quality 21st century education, especially now as many of our children are facing remote learning options. Again, thank you so much to our teachers, our staff, and our school leaders for continuing to support our children and our parents. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Is Jorandi here? I didn't see her. You're here. Okay, Durandi, you're up. Executive Director of the Community Resource Center of Mamaroneck, and then Dr. Mary Fox Alter, and then Samantha Rosado Ciriello. Durandi, I'm so glad you're here.
Hello, thank you, my good friend, Senator Shelley Mayer. Thank you. Hello, I'm Durandi Martinez with the Community Resource Center in Mamaroneck. We are a nonprofit, community-based organization serving the new immigrant community of Mamaroneck, Larchmont, and Greater Westchester. And I want to say thank you so much to Senator Shelley Mayer, Senator Lawrence, Senator Harkman for their leadership in the eLearn Act and bill. I can't express how much it pains me to see my community. My community is new immigrant, low income, hard-working community. And they have suffered the most in this pandemic. On top of all of their social, economic ills and other social ills, fear of immigration, fear of deportation, lack of work, lack of access to healthcare, they've also had to endure learning the remote learning system and trying to access English classes and access their school's first grade classroom so that their children can keep learning. I've never seen a community go through so much of that and still push through. But I want to also remember, we live in Mamaroneck, and we're very lucky to live in Mamaroneck, where there is at least the distribution of a device. But I will say, Senator Shelley Mayer, you remember Axel Veloz that you met a couple of weeks ago? Yeah. Axel was on a Zoom civics education youth leadership class last night. He was on a group program with our community center. And he's literally typing his response and his participation because he was given a device that has a defective microphone. You can't hear his voice. So what's happening is even with young people who have access to devices, they are literally being rendered voiceless. And I can't imagine what it's like for him to participate in his class, in his high school classrooms, let alone a civics education program that he does after school, just to keep his mind busy, but also to learn and to actively participate as a community member. Axel represents a lot of different community members and leaders, young people, BIPOC, people of color, so many other people that this bill is going to help. So I want you to remember that this is for Axel and all of those young people that need broadband, Wi-Fi, everything, the entire gamut in order to continue to learn and participate in our communities. So thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you, Durandi. And he was an unbelievable young star, Axel. I can't wait to see him. Okay, Dr. Mary Fox Alter, and then Samantha Rosado Ciriello, and then Dr. Maria Rihanna. All right, good afternoon. Good afternoon. Light, power, water. Let's have a great attitude of gratitude to Senator Shelley Mayer for bringing in the 21st century next mandated utility, broadband internet access. Thank you, Shelley. All right. On behalf of the students in Pleasantville and the Lower Hudson Education Coalition, we strongly believe that the provision of free, high-speed, quality broadband to every student and every school in New York State is vital to ensuring students have equal opportunity to learn and thrive, especially now during this COVID-19 pandemic, where the digital divide has been truly exposed across this great state of ours. We thank Senator Mayer and her colleagues for addressing this issue head on. Thank you, Senator. Okay, Samantha, and then, I'm sorry, I know a lot of people by first name, Dr. Maria Rihanna and Meg Calver, so come. Thank you.
you and good afternoon, everyone. It brings me great pleasure that at a time in a pandemic when many of us feel so much anxiety, today's event and this bill brings us hope. Hope of a new future. Hope that our students will be able to be successful and successfully participate in our communities with this bill. As this pandemic has underscored inequities across our society, the digital divide among our students and families has widened to a canyon. Far too many Yonkers students and students across New York State are relying on costly cell phone data plans or simply going without access to technology they need for remote learning because they lack affordable, reliable broadband access. Families are forced to make hard decisions as to whether to pay for Wi-Fi or food or their bills. In a time of pandemic where access to museums, theater, business facilities is limited, internet provides the opportunities for our students to engage virtually. At a time where hands-on science experiments cannot occur because of viral transmission, internet provides those laboratory experiments and experiences. At a time when many homes have multiple children using one cell phone data plans. Imagine your job spending all day, 8 hours, doing your entire job on a cell phone. That is what life is like for a student without internet. So we thank Senator Shelley Mayer and her colleagues and each and every person here for supporting this very, very necessary and very overdue bill. Because this is the window to our future. Thank you.
Sorry. Dr. Rihanna, yes, please. And then Meg, and then I know there's some others who may want to speak and have a minute or we can move on.
Good afternoon. All superintendents, and those I especially represent today, the New York State Association of Small City Schools, want to thank Senator Mayer for her leadership in crafting this very important legislation. To Senator Lieu and Senator Harckham and others, educators who truly believe our children, whether they are sitting in the legislature or sitting in our classrooms, for their continued steadfast support of our children, for understanding the necessity, for leading the advocacy. We are so very grateful. Recognizing the diverse needs that we face and working towards meaningful solutions like that which we are celebrating today will and can result in providing fair, equitable opportunities for all our children across all our classrooms, across all our schools. We have worked tirelessly hand in hand with our teachers, our custodians, our teacher assistants, all our staff to deliver effective virtual learning in these unprecedented times of COVID-19. The eLearn Act will provide accessibility to nearly 250,000 children in small cities that we serve. Today is a step, a truly significant step forward in eradicating the digital divide and in creating a system that is truly fair and equitable. The educational opportunities that can be provided to all our children. Sincerely, Senator Mayer, we thank you.
That's very, very nice. Meg? And then I know there's some others, and we have 5 minutes left, so I don't want to exclude anyone who wants to add something.
Thank you so much, Senator Mayer, and a special thanks to all of our amazing community leaders, school district leaders, and nonprofit leaders who have already spoken on behalf of this incredibly important legislation. We are all adjusting to a new reality under the COVID-19 pandemic conditions. Remote learning is today's classroom. It's not optional, and it's not our choice, but it is our new reality. As a leader of a STEM education nonprofit, I speak frequently about science, technology, engineering, and math education, and I've always advocated for technology education and resources for all children. For the STEM Alliance, it's been an urgent imperative since we were first created. Our world is increasingly driven by technology and digital efficiencies. If all children are not primed to live and learn on digital platforms, we will not be raising kids for jobs of tomorrow. And we will not be economically competitive on a local level, a regional level, a state level, or a global level. The pandemic has made the need for affordable internet access more clear and more urgent for everyone. The STEM Alliance applauds Senator Mayer for recognizing this urgency and responding with an innovative approach to share responsibility to addressing internet access. This bill asks a lot of our internet service providers. It asks a lot. It really does. But it will give more than it takes. In a time of crisis, we can rise together to make sure that all children can learn. The added silver lining in this work is that we will also be ensuring that children have the tools that they need to be more successful in the future. This bill is called eLearn. It's about making internet access affordable for children during the pandemic. But I would argue that it could just have easily been called eLive or eSucceed. When we invest in the technological connection and education of our children, we are supporting the growth of the next generation of highly connected future citizens and future tech leaders who will ultimately advance the growth and economic success of our state. Thank you so much for your leadership. Okay. Is there anyone who I haven't called on, and only because of time? Allison, would you like to add? Allison Lake, Director of the Westchester Children's Association, who convened a forum on this where I heard firsthand from parents about their experiences, together with Family Ties of Westchester.
Thank you, Senator Mayer, and your colleagues that are here today. As was said, Westchester Children's Association, we are a multi-issue children's advocacy organization. And when the pandemic hit in March, the data that we base our advocacy on was so clear about the digital divide that exists here in Westchester County and throughout New York State. We quickly mobilized many of the stakeholders that you have heard from today, community partners, superintendents, and nonprofits, to really take a look at what was going to make a difference for our children. I'm so happy that the eLearn bill put forth through Senator Mayer is going to give access to our children regardless of where they live, regardless of income of their families. This bill is important that we see every child succeed. And we're prepared at Westchester Children's Association to get the word out, to do the outreach that is necessary to give our elected officials the backbone that they will need to get this done. So thank you so much.
So I think unless there's anyone who has something additional, I want to close by thanking my colleagues, thanking so many of you who are here. We could have had even more if there weren't the rules of how many can be in a public place. But that's because this is the equity issue of our moment and of our time. It's our obligation as elected officials to step up and lead, not to just wait around. We've taken an approach, we put our foot down, we said we're going to try to fix this problem. Now we wait to meet with the telecommunications companies. We invite them, get to the table, help us solve this. This is a problem we must fix now. Thank you very much, and thank you to my colleagues.
No, I'm good. I got tons of Yeah, thank you.
Excuse me. I want to recognize the BOCES students back there who set up the sound system. Thank you all. Thank you for doing all this work, and it actually, everything worked perfectly, so credit to you. What are you pointing to me? Video. And the video. I wouldn't want to leave out the video. Thank you very much. Thank you, BOCES, and the sound instructor from BOCES. Mr. Hardy. And Mr. May. Thank you, BOCES.
There we go.
Thank you, Miliana.
Okay, guys.
Quick shot. Quick shot.